Well, hi again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of 100 Yards of Football. This is Take 5 with Steven Travers. And Steven joins us today. Our producer and engineer is Logan Landers, and our special guest is a high school standout. He is a college All-American, a number 2 draft pick of the 49ers. They win the Super Bowl while he's there, and now he's day trading. So Jeff Bragel is our guest today. Before we get to Jeff, I'd just like to very quickly mention the Final Four is happening. It's the weekend. And whether your favorite team is still in it to win it, or if you've got somebody else that is an outsider that you might root for just because this weekend, there's a way to do that and take advantage of it. And that's through mybookie.ag. If you go to the site, it's so simple. All you need to do is log in, enter a username and a password. Once you sign in, you fund your account, and you can start placing bets as easy as 1, 2, 3. It's so quick. You go to the website, you can bet on sports betting, traditional card games, craps. You can do all kinds of different regular casino type activity. And then you also have the horses. So if any of those are of interest to you, enter the promo code MM50. If you do that, it certainly helps our show. We greatly appreciate it. But it lets the folks there know that you're listening and that you want to be a part. You get some free gifts that are a part of that. What could be better? So thank you for tuning in with that in mind. And we'll get back to the show and we're going to bring up Jeff Bragel in just a moment. Steven Travers. Steven, you have known Jeff for quite a while. He's a Valley guy. He was born in Redondo, but grew up and played high school ball in the San Fernando Valley. We're about the same age, but Jeff obviously had a fantastic football career, and you became friends with him. Tell us how.
Well, it starts off, I was a classmate of Jeff's, a little older, but I was a senior when he was first coming in to the University of Southern California. And Jeff and I have been good friends for the better part of 2 decades now. I've interviewed Jeff for several of my books, and Jeff stays at my house when he comes through this area. And so we've just become good friends over the years. And he's a great Trojan, a loyal Trojan, a good guy, a good friend, and an absolutely unbelievable athlete. Truly one of the great football players of his era, a blue chip lineman at Kennedy High School in Granada Hills, which is in the San Fernando Valley. And at that particular time, that part of the valley, and you know this, Harper, because you grew up there as well, was really where it was really a gold mine of high school talent in the Los Angeles City section. Then he went to the University of Southern California, where he was not once, but twice a first-team All-American at USC, one of their all-time greats, finished second, I believe, in the balloting for the Heisman Trophy, a very high draft pick of the 49ers, not one, but 2 Super Bowls with the 1988 and 1989 49ers. I got to know Jeff when I did a book called What It Means to Be a Trojan, where I interviewed a number of great Trojans. So we've got a lot in common. I admire his athletic skills, and it's great to have you on the show, Jeff. Welcome to 100 Yards of Football, Take 5 with Steven Travers.
All right, thanks, Steve. Hey, guys. Hey,
All right. Well, Harper, why don't you get started? You got the introduction, and I'll jump in there with little anecdotes. Uh-oh. Looks like Harper's internet has frozen. Okay, well, leave it to me. All right, Jeff, welcome to the show. Why don't we get started with you growing up, and you're in the, Harper said you were born in Redondo. When did you move to the San Fernando Valley?
I think, I was born in Redondo, Redondo Beach, and lived in Manhattan Beach with my mom and dad for probably a few months, and then they moved to Saugus until I was about 4 up in Canyon Country, which is now Santa Clarita, California, and then we moved down to Granada Hills when I was probably 4. And
so when you were a kid, the likes of John Elway and Tom Ramsey and a lot of great athletes were forming in Granada Hills. Did you go to a lot of those high school football games when you were a toddler?
In fact, when I was a fifth grader, I went to the Kennedy San Fernando game where Kennedy beat San Fernando that year. That was the year that San Fernando won the city championship in 1975, I think it was, and or 77 maybe. But anyway, Charles White it would have been 75, I think. Yeah. Charles White was he was a quarterback and a running back for San Fernando because they ran the wishbone, so they could all run. I think Charles White might have been the quarterback, but he was running one for a touchdown, and the guy, I'm blanking on the guy. But one of our guys ran him down and saved the game, and we won. We beat San Fernando that year. So
San Fernando in those days was a juggernaut. I mean, they were arguably, I would say, in the first half of the 1970s, you could say San Fernando High was as good a high school football program as there was in the United States of America.
Exactly.
Do you agree with that?
Oh yeah, yep. They won multiple city championships all through the 70s. And, Kennedy was pretty good. I mean, we won the league a few times and beat San Fernando like that year and a few other times, but they were good. And they dominated, the other city teams like Manning and Carson, and were able to beat those guys. When I played in high school, my senior year, we lost to Carson in the semifinals, where we would have played Manning in the championship. So,
right,
it was we were pretty good back then too. That was 82. Right. See, it would have been the season of 81.
Tell us about who your coach was at Kennedy High School and his influence on you.
Yeah, Dick Whitney, actually, Coach Whitney and John Haynes. I think the field is named after John Haynes, Haynes Field. He was there for a long time. But when I was there were like co-head coaches. Coach Whitney was the defensive coordinator, and then Haynes ran the offense. And Whitney, he was I think he was president of the National Football Foundation for a while down in Orange County College, a Hall of Fame National Football Foundation deal. I've been on that ballot a few times recently, but I haven't made it, so we'll see. But it was.
Are we talking about the College Football Hall of Fame? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, Whitney was the. I mean, they have it for high school kids too. It's National Football Foundation. So
okay.
It's all the same thing. Yeah. The College Hall of Fame is the. I mean, I believe is also the football foundation.
Yeah.
Whitney was the president. Orange County.
So, at what point during your high school career did you start getting some serious attention from colleges?
My junior season, I started getting letters from everybody. And I was getting recruited. I was about 235 my junior season, and played both ways. Played nose tackle and offensive tackle, and. By the time I was a senior, I was like 265, 270, and pretty much dominating on defense. I got recruited by everybody pretty much.
So this was an era in which two great coaches were in Southern California: Terry Donahue at UCLA and John Robinson at Southern California. Obviously, both of those schools wanted your services. You've told me about some of those stories. Tell me about some of the backroom angles that were used to sort of win this battle between the Bruins and the Trojans to get the likes of Jeff Regal to sign on the dotted line.
Well, I had already pretty much decided I wanted to go to USC. after my Washington State visit, I went up there just to check it out because I knew some of the guys that I played against. And, Eric Howard was up there, and he had won the Morris Trophy. I won it when I was a junior for the Pac-10 Offensive Lineman of the Year, and he was the defensive guy. So we met up in Seattle. So I wanted to go on the recruiting trip just to see Eric and meet Keith Millard, and so after that visit, I was tired of the trips. I'd gone to Michigan. They were recruiting me, and I was trying to decide between Michigan, Washington, and USC. And I pretty much decided on SC the weekend of my UCLA visit, and I canceled UCLA, and I went to the gym, and Coach Donnie, who had called the house and talked to my mom, and mom, told Coach Donnie where I was at, and they started calling the gym, and had me, just going out of their way to get a hold of me and stuff. It was crazy, but I kind of blew off my trip to UCLA. I didn't go, But, I didn't want to go because I'd already decided I was going to go to SA. So they were trying to hunt me down, man, and I was in the gym.
Right. I'll bet that kind of story has happened for a lot of Southland athletes over the years.
I don't know.
So you were recruited by John Robinson, but between was he there your freshman year, or did he leave prior to your freshman year?
He was my freshman coach. I redshirted my freshman year, but
okay.
He was the guy that recruited me, and he was awesome. John was in my living room with Marv Gill.
Marv Gill and John Robinson.
Coach Gill and Robinson, they recruited me as a defensive lineman, the nose tackle, and I was a city city player of the year, Valley City 4A player of the year at nose tackle, and a defense player of the year. And so they wanted me as a nose tackle, and then I came in, and my lateral movement was okay, but I really didn't know the gap type responsibility stuff that you need to know for college, because we weren't. I didn't learn enough in high school, about defensive line to really, learn how to play the game the right way in college. So they moved me over to offensive line after my first year, and I started my second. I started 4 years as an offensive guard.
Jeff, if you don't mind me interrupting, please forgive me, folks. I ended up there's some internet issues at the house and had to go with my backup plan. But I know you mentioned some things earlier. Do you think that playing nose tackle made you a better offensive lineman, or an offensive lineman make you a better nose tackle? Is there a correlation between the two of those for you?
For me, yeah. I think having played nose tackle and having had more agility and done the work it takes to be a defensive lineman, it gave and aggressiveness, gave me an edge on that offensive line play, except for pass protection. I really had to watch it because I had to learn how to sit and relax and be patient, not be too aggressive.
Yeah, I would imagine that, a lot of folks have said, playing linebacker made me a better offensive. I learned leverage. I learned what the offensive guys were doing or trying to do to me. And then when I played defense, I was able to counter that, and the vice versa, obviously taking place from a defensive to an offensive perspective. At 270, you said, basically by your senior year. And back then, there wasn't a whole lot of weightlifting. There might have been some power cleans and maybe one bar in most weight rooms in the high schools. Did you go off campus? Did you lift at Nautilus, or did you have another workout facility that was just right for you?
I did, yeah. We had a couple places. There was Valencia Health Club 2, which was on Chatsworth Street in Granada Hills, and then that closed down. And we were at Dave's Gym, which was a local gym, and they had really good weightlifting equipment back then. that was back in the pumping iron days when Arnold Schwarzenegger and all those guys were coming up. There were bodybuilders and powerlifters in this gym. Fred Hatfield used to come in there and stuff.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. And, so it was neat meeting those guys and coming up and, meeting a guy named Jack Wright who knew John. He was in the men's or the world's strongest man competition with John Kolb and the gentleman who the center Dave were the Steelers. Who,
Mike Webster.
Mike Webster, yeah. He was in the world's strongest man competition, and he obviously had the issues with the concussive stuff. So,
hey Jeff, did you have to wear one of those little self-made spaghetti string men's tank tops that had Dave's Gym written on the front of it, and cut everything away? Come on now, I think you may have had one of those in your drawer somewhere, right? When you're getting ready to go to the beach.
No, I didn't do that. That's funny. That's great.
But to me, Dave's, and there's a couple of places in the San Fernando Valley that are just like I can envision. The weights are rusty, there's no air conditioning, there's no mirrors. But if you want to get strong, especially with another group of guys that want to get strong, you're in the right place at the right time, aren't you?
Yeah, it was interesting. And but our weight room in high school wasn't bad. We had a circuit training machine, and then also free weights and a nice bench press.
Okay.
Beautiful squat rack. So we did the power cleans and the bench press and deadlifts and all that in our high school weight room as well. So we had pretty good facilities.
Was there a gym in the valley at that time called Vince's?
Yes.
I don't remember.
Yeah,
that got mentioned in the movie Boogie Nights. So
yes. Yeah, I don't know if it was on Ventura Boulevard, but it was out by Studio City, Vince's Gym, and you could hear the weights clanging from outside if you were driving by. Hey, what other sports did you play, Jeff, growing up? Were you a Little League guy? Did you play?
Yes, sir. I played baseball. Our Little League team was we lost to Port Hueneme in the regionals, or we would have went to Williamsport, and we had a great team, and we had some 12-year-olds that threw heat and could throw curveballs and all that. It was crazy.
Well, no wonder Steven likes you so much, because you're baseball at heart. Everyone played baseball back in those days. You ever play any wiffle ball in the backyard?
Never did the wiffle ball. No.
What?
We had a pitchback, man. A couple of those things.
Oh, yeah. Hank Aaron pitchback. That's right. Those things lasted about one summer, and then they get, then you'd find out use for them.
Pitchback. Yep. I had one. But baseball was fun, man. Right? I should have kept playing. I didn't play in high school. I was just I got into that gym thing like you were talking about in the weight room, and just kept doing that. So baseball would have been a good thing too. I was a good hitter.
Well, going back to your recruiting situation, I've heard that back in the day when, and Steven can confirm this, when John McKay would come to visit, he'd have a cigar in his mouth, and he'd go visit with Dad, and say, "I want your son to come play for the University of Southern California." On the opposite end, Terry Donahue would go in with that little light blue sweater on, or one of those little goldish ones, and he'd go visit with Mom and tell her how good the spaghetti. So I think Terry worked on Mrs. Bregel to say, "You got to tell me where he is." "Oh, well, he's down the street. You got to go find him."
Right. That's funny, man. Yep. Yeah, Terry had the ladies, man. That's funny. Yeah, my mom was, they called and, she gave it away. But he's at the gym, and they started calling the gym, and I was in there working out and stuff. And I got on there and talked to him. I said, I was really embarrassed. I didn't really want to go, I didn't go on my trip, man. So
that's a tough conversation for a 17-year-old, isn't it?
Yeah, it was tough.
How do you say no to the UCLA Bruins, unless you have in pocket the USC Trojans as a scholar? What was
It's amazing from that day on. Coach Nanu and I became, we're friends, remained friends. He was at Kennedy Polo's wedding, that was neat. I had to sit down with had dinner with him and stuff, and his wife.
Did anything?
Different occasions I've seen him.
Well, since you didn't go to the campus, I mean, it's a absolutely gorgeous campus. The only time I guess you saw that was going to the Mardi Gras that they had there every spring.
No, I've been to that campus many times. My girlfriend in college was Alpha Phi at UCLA.
Okay.
Yeah. So I spent a lot of time on the Westwood campus now.
Yeah, you go to an SC UCLA sporting event, in particular baseball, where there's a lot of jawing, but really any event, there's a lot of personal jawing and stuff that gets said. If you get up really close and listen to what these guys are saying to each other, they know each other, they know each other's girlfriends, they know each other's families, they've played with or against each other in high school or in all-star games. The USC UCLA rivalry is a very unique sports rivalry that really doesn't have any comparison. It's two major colleges in the exact same city. It's about 10 miles separate the two schools straight down the 10 freeway, and those guys know each other.
Yeah, that's a huge part of the rivalry and bragging rights and all of that kind of stuff. Tell me a little bit. I was up there once. I went my junior year of high school. It was kind of a self-made trip, but what'd you think of the campus up there in Seattle, and what was it like talking with Don James and the rest of the the amazing success that he was able to put together there at Washington?
Well, Coach James was phenomenal. Coach Pinkel, who passed away, I believe, and he had the camp in the end at Missouri. He was a head coach there. And then the gentleman, the defensive line coach who recruited me. Well, Pinkel and can't remember the other guy's name, but Don James had a great staff, and those guys they were they had a great thing going on. We went and watched them play at Orange Coast College when they were down for the Rose Bowl. And,
okay.
In '85, I think, '84.
Yeah, it's where they practiced. Yeah.
Yep.
Hey, Jeff, moving on to USC, I remember, you said you redshirted your freshman year. So I remember a game in 1982 against, actually you guys played home and home against Florida.
Right.
In 82, the game was in Gainesville.
Right.
And it was unbelievably hot. And I think they played, and Florida had a guy, I can't remember his name, he was a big-time star in the NFL. He had 17 tackles. Did you make that road trip, or do you remember that game?
I was on the trip. Yes, sir. I was there. Great.
Did they have?
It was unfortunate. Coach Robinson was pretty upset after that game. That was the first loss of the season, first game of the season, and it was humid. It was hot. It was 120 degrees on the turf. The thermometer was, it was crazy. It was, the swamp is what they call it, and it's truly a swamp. And it was. We lost. We were tough.
Well, then the next year, '83, and now you're a starter in '83. The opener is again against Florida, this time at the LA Coliseum. And frankly, I was at that game. It was just as hot. I don't know if it was as humid, but it had to be 100 degrees, maybe, late Labor Day weekend. And it was a crazy, crazy game where Florida was way ahead and you guys rallied. And then, as I recall, you missed an extra point at the end and had to settle for a tie.
Yeah, I think we missed an extra point at some point. Yeah, we ended up tying. I think it was 17-17.
Yeah, something like that. I want to say 23.
I got a chance to play against my buddy Mark Corp, who played at Kennedy. He was a standout in high school, and he was a year ahead of me. He ended up going to Pasadena junior college for a year, and then transferred to Florida and started. And then, so that was the year I redshirted when he was at PCA, Pasadena City College, PCC. And then he went to Florida, got a scholarship to Florida, and then we played against each other. It was pretty cool. He was in the Coliseum, and we were playing against one-on-one.
Tell me about Coach Ted Tollner, who, just to give a little background, the great John Robinson left USC at the end of the '82 season to become head coach of the Los Angeles Rams. He brought Marv Goo with him. He coached Eric Dickerson with the Rams and had quite a bit of success, although the team could not beat the great 49ers with Joe Montana. And we'll get to your relationship with that team and with Joe Montana later. But a new coach comes in, and he's been at BYU. He has a reputation for being very strong with the passing game. He had played at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo with John Madden, I believe, and I think he was on the team that had a plane crash at San Luis Obispo. Right. And this is Ted Tollner. He was the coach in my last year at USC. And this is 83, and then we go into 84, 85. But tell me about Coach Tollner.
Well, Coach Tollner was a great guy. He had my back all the way along, and he thought, my junior season, thought I probably should have gone out and would have gone in the first 10 picks. And, I stayed around for my senior year, and he said, just keep playing, you'll go in the first 10, and, I had injuries and stuff. My spine started, aching, and had problems with issues with my back, and my combine scores went down, and I ended up dropping in the draft. But Coach Tollner was a great coach, man. He was a team. He was a team guy. I don't know. He had a great passing offense. I mean, I think we threw more passes once he took over. A little bit more of a passing attack, but it didn't really change as much as I thought it would have. We were still doing the student body left, student body right, all the same running plays. We had only ran 4 or 5 really good running plays. The 49ers, we ran like 25, It's incredible. But there it is, Coach Tollner. Yeah, a couple of years ago, he turned 80. We all called him on his 80th birthday. Pretty cool.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So you were a 2-time first, correct me if I'm wrong here, a 2-time first-team college All-American in 1985 and 1986?
Yep, I think it was, 80. Well, it would have been the 85-86 season. So.
There aren't that many people who can say that they're 2-time first-team college All-American. I know you finished second in the Outland Trophy one year. Was that your junior year or your senior year?
Yeah, you made one mistake there, Steven, in the beginning. I think you said Heisman, but it was the Outland. Second.
You said what?
You made one mistake. I think you said the Heisman. And
it's funny.
I would never run her up with the Heisman, Steve. That was the Outland.
I watched this. I watched this show on the replays
a
lot, and it's amazing how many mistakes people make. And I think to myself about people who are in a courtroom or they're under oath, and you say something and I know it's not like I don't know it. You just make mental errors as things come out of your mouth.
Yeah, Steve, I'm a ham radio guy. They don't call me Doomcoff for nothing, man.
Yeah. So, okay, forget the Heisman, but although I'm sure you got some Heisman votes being a 2-team All-American. Let's see, in 86, that would have been up against 85. Was that Bo Jackson or was that 85?
Bo Jackson was the Heisman, and would have been my senior.
I think it was 85. But you also were a finalist and got a lot of votes for the Outland Trophy. Why don't you talk to me about that?
That would have been my senior year and both my junior and senior year. I think was in the running for it. Mike Ruth won it my junior year, and then my senior year, Jerome Brown, who was stand-up.
Oh, yeah.
And him and I became pretty good friends, and I let him, back in Miami actually at the Playboy All American. They had a shoot where they do the photos and all that, and we had a team meeting with all the guys on the team back in Miami and stuff, and a little party thing going on, and it was pretty cool meeting all the guys. And I met Jerome, and he died in a car accident. It was pretty crazy. So I got to play against him.
1984, your team.
We played for Philadelphia, man. We played against those guys, and that was crazy. Jerome Brown and Red White, very defense.
I just wanted to touch on your 1984 Trojan team, which is near and dear to my heart because I knew a lot of players on your team. Steve Jordan and Tim Green are still good friends of mine, teammates of yours. And that was an underdog team. Tollner's first year, the team had not performed well, but in 1984, they managed to win the Pac-10 conference and go up. And I was at that Rose Bowl game against Ohio State. Jordan kicked 5 field goals, and I'm going to make a plug for Steve. He kicked 5 field goals that day, all more than 50 yards in a game won. I believe the final score was 20-17. And he should be in the Rose Bowl Hall of Fame for that performance. But apparently they don't like to put place kickers in there. But why don't you talk about that 84 team that Tollner coached? And it was and that was a team which Sean Salisbury was a blue chip quarterback, and he got injured. And Tim Green, who was an outstanding junior college player and had grown up in Redondo Beach, where you were raised, and I knew him later living in the South Bay. He came on and just did a magnificent job guiding that team to victory and guiding them to victory over the Buckeyes against a really good team. Why don't you talk about that 84 Rose Bowl team?
That team was loaded with talent. We had, Tim Green came out of nowhere. He was a transfer from JC. He played at Aviation High School in Redondo. They're not even around anymore, and I just talked to him last week, man. He's doing really, really well. He lives a couple hours north from me here in Idaho, and Tim is doing well, man. And he, Jack Del Rio was on that team, and let me see, Dwayne Bickett. We had we were loaded with talent. Tim McDonald. We had so many players that were, that went out of the NFL.
Yeah. Well, talk to me about the athletic skills of Jack Del Rio.
Jack was awesome, man. He, I don't know. He wasn't the best pass rusher in the world. I didn't think. I mean, one-on-one, he in a 2 technique. I did okay against the guy, but he could run all over the field, and he was a great athlete, and definitely old zone, man. Wayne Bickett was really good,
Yeah,
those 2 guys were like bookends. They were bookends that year, and Tollner talked about those guys at the beginning of the season, and they proved them right. They did a good job holding up the end.
Just to give our audience a little inside information, Tim McDonald played for the 49ers and was one of Lee Steinberg's clients, and is credited with the saying from Jerry Maguire, "Show me the money." But Harper, why don't you? I'm sure you've got some questions about USC before we move into Jeff's 49ers years.
Yeah,
you can't forget about Neil Hope. I got to bring Neil Hope. I got to point. I see. Wow.
Well, you made me pretty upset there, Stephen, because Tim McDonald tackles me on the 2-yard line in my only catch in the NFL, and I'm ready to go in the end zone, and all of a sudden I'm not anywhere close. Tim brought me down as quick as anybody could possibly do so. So thanks a lot for that. But Jeff, that Rose Bowl year, I'm looking at the schedule here. You lose to LSU, you lose to UCLA, and then Notre Dame. But you still qualified. You were 7-1 in the conference, so you beat everybody that you needed to, except for the Bruins and the Rose Bowl experience. Talk about, if you can remember anything about, man, what was it like playing against LSU? And for obvious reasons, going up against the Irish, that's a big game, no matter what. National significance, getting a chance to do that for 4 years in a row. Share a little bit about that.
Well, that was my sophomore year, and LSU was we came into our place into the Coliseum, and they were struggling like Florida was in my freshman year, the year before, and because they were from down south, and they weren't used to playing in the smog. It was a different type of atmosphere, and those guys couldn't breathe. We the defensive line we weren't running them out, but they ended up beating us. They had a pretty good defense, and they were running all over the field, and they beat us. But that was a good game. I mean, I had some good blocks and stuff, but we didn't beat them. And Notre Dame was in the mud. We played them in the mud.
I was at that game. It was pouring against Notre Dame in '84. Absolutely drenched.
Mud bowl. Yep.
But a quick turnaround for the Trojans. That first year that you get a chance to play when Tolner takes over, you're 4-6-1. That tie in week 1 against the Gators, and then 9-3. Obviously, things look really good and up and coming. You got to feel good about the program. What about you mentioned some of the guys that were already there. What about the recruiting class? Was Ted able to bring in the same type of talent as, let's say, John Robinson or McKay would, or was there a little bit of a void in that area?
No, I think Coach Tolner kept bringing in guys. We had talent all the way through. It's just we just didn't. My junior and senior year, we didn't put it together. I think my junior year we were. I don't remember our record, but we lost to Alabama in the Aloha Bowl.
Yep, 6-6 that year.
Yeah, you did rally to beat UCLA on the last minute.
Well, we were fortunate to play Alabama in the Aloha Bowl. I don't know how that happened, but we got to go there and play them. But we didn't beat them. It was great playing against those guys, though. It was fun.
Well, I've asked a lot of people this, Jeff, and so I'm going to make sure that I don't refrain from doing the same to you. You're on the field or you're getting ready to go out, and you can hear the band going down the peristyle end, and they start with Spirit of Troy. They play Conquest. What was that like for you the first time that you look around and you're wearing the uniform and you're on the field and you know that all of this is the attention? You're part of that tradition and all that kind of stuff. I heard one guy, Drake London, who's a wide receiver from SC, who's here with the Atlanta Falcons. I said, what was that like for you? He goes, man, I still get chills down my spine when I start thinking about stuff like that. It was amazing.
Right. The fight on, the fight song, and, the way the games were, everything was awesome at SC, man. I mean, it was really a place for victory. We should have won more games while I was there, and it was unfortunate we didn't. But the whole time we were there, we were always in the mode to win games and to do the best we could. And I think every time we heard that fight song and saw that heard the band and stuff, and we used to see the band on Fridays before the game. Right after practice, and watch those guys, and that would pump us up before we go see the movie and then for the home games and stuff. Yeah, it was Trojan tradition, definitely.
Absolutely. The Song Girls, Traveler, Tommy Trojan, all of that kind of stuff. I mean, getting to be a part of that had to be a little bit of a dream come true. Before I forget, though, you were an academic All-American as well. Is that something that carried over from high school where you just started to get it in the class and you didn't need to be tutored? You just picked some things up, and did that help your athleticism at all?
You know, I was actually tutored by a guy who's a full professor now at UC Santa Barbara. We recruited him at SC, and ended up getting a little problem with. He was on he was on his recruiting trip. Tony DiTomaso, Dr. DiTomaso now, and we didn't end up getting him because we had a problem with some drinking and stuff. And anyways, well, one thing led to another. He ended up going back to the hotel. Long story short, it wasn't a good night. But so he went to Stanford, and he I forget what I was talking about. I don't know. Where was I at?
Yeah, you're talking about you were an academic All-American.
Oh yeah. And he tutored me in high school. So he was he was a year behind me, and he was already doing Algebra 2, and I was like Algebra 1 or whatever when I was a senior. And so he tutored me in algebra, and then so I was able to get all the credits that I needed for college to get into the business school at SC and do all that stuff. Yeah, I mean, I learned my own way, but I definitely wasn't a gift. I was a school athlete because I worked really hard and studied hard. I don't know if I was a guy like Tony DiTomaso. He was the 4.0 guy.
Okay, so Einstein Jr. Was a little bit.
Yeah.
But if you don't mind, share a little bit about the desire for SC to take care of their own, for you to be a success, and obviously for that to be passed down from one generation to another, from one athletic class to another. Steven has mentioned on numerous occasions how the film school, for example, there's all these people that know each other, great successes in Hollywood and in film and in television. They take care of their own, don't they?
Yep. In every facet of that university, you have legacies, and I think definitely take care of their own for sure. We have a tradition, it's I don't know, in the football tradition, it's really, been I'd say, what I'm trying to say. It's been a deal where I'm getting kind of lost, guys. I'm kind of tired.
Oh, that's okay. So, Kev, let's move on to the San Francisco 49ers. That had to be an absolute thrill because they were the pro football team, really one of the great dynasties of all time when you joined them and beginning in the 1987 season. There's Bill Walsh, there's Steve Young, there's Joe Montana, there's the great Ronnie Lott. There were a lot of great players from both USC and UCLA and Notre Dame who were on the 49ers. What was that culture like for you to join them as a talented rookie in 1987?
Oh, spot on. Coach Walsh was the best coach in the business. The best coach I've ever been around. Really, and the most organized, the best manager. That was the best organization. I mean, they ran that. The 49ers ran an organization that everybody tried to copy. Ronnie Law was already there. They had guys in place. Joe Montana, Jerry Rice. It was already set up for winning championships, and they had already won two, one in 80, 81, and 84, and then it was just a matter of time when we'd get another one because we had a winning tradition. And some great coaches.
The system there, if you don't mind, I was there in '86 for about an hour. I didn't pass my physical, but I'm in the meeting, and Bill's drawing up Omaha, Lightning, Thunder, all of these different little quick day one things. All the vets they weren't asleep, but they might as well. They didn't pick their pencils up. I'm trying to copy everything the man says, but his attention to detail was amazing, wasn't it? And the way that he taught like an educator would teach. We're going to write it up on the board, and then I'm going to explain things, and we're going to watch it on film. Then we're going to go out and practice, and we're going to walk through it. Then we're going to go through it against a defense. We're going to go through it at half speed in practice, and then in full speed. And at the end of the week, we're going to end up. You're going to go up, and you're going to teach it to us.
Yep. Yeah, very organized, and his coaches were really spot on as well. I mean, the way he managed his coaches, the guys. I mean, Bob McKittrick, didn't get any, doesn't get a whole lot of credit for what he did for that team. He really is was responsible for the running game there because Coach Walsh would put it up on the board and stuff, and then they talk about it, and then Coach McKittrick would bring it into the lineman, and we'd get it all dialed in. But it was just the way everything built. Bill ran things very, it was coordinated. Definitely.
Yeah. By the way, real quick in the draft, you were a second rounder. The 49ers had 2 first rounders that year. But a 7th rounder out of Colorado State, a guy named Steve DeLine. He's called the Kicking Cowboy. You got to be in camp with him a little bit. He and I were teammates at Colorado State. Great leg.
Geez, yeah. I remember him. Yeah, a lot of the guys. How long was he there? I don't remember how long he was even there.
He didn't end up making the team. They had already had a kicker, but they were bringing him in to kind of take the job. He wasn't able to do it. He ended up in Philadelphia.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I don't remember.
That's okay.
So, Jeff, in 1988, you're a member of one of the most memorable teams in pro football history. This is a 49er team that is trailing the Cincinnati Bengals with only a couple of minutes to go in the Super Bowl. There was a famed play or a famed moment during that drive in which Joe Montana looks on the sidelines and says to his teammates, "Oh, that's John Candy. Look at that." Talk about Joe Cool, the leadership abilities of a guy who can joke about John Candy being on the sidelines while the team is driving, and how he just wasn't going to be stopped. What kind of a leader and all-around athlete was the great Joe Montana?
Well, Joe was pretty relaxed, and then game time and before the game and stuff. Everybody had a little upset stomach. I think Joe got a little tight. Everybody did, but in the huddle, he was the commander in chief and would take care of his guys and just make sure that we're okay and ready to go. So yeah.
What was it like? What does it feel like to win a Super Bowl? I mean, that's the ultimate. It doesn't get any better than that. It's
1-2. Yeah. Super Bowl. There for 2. Yep.
What was the exhilaration like? What went through your mind? Did you feel like everything I've worked for was for this moment, and all my hard work has paid off, and all the team's hard work has paid off, and everything that Bill had put into the team had come to fruition? What are some of the feelings that go through an athlete's mind when you reach the ultimate in sports?
Well, it was difficult for me, Steve, to be honest. I was injured. I had my first year, I had my ACL repair. I blew my ACL out against the Chargers going into the Super Bowl on the run. We were like 5-6. We played the Raiders, lost to the Raiders, and then after that we won out. We beat the Redskins on Monday Night Football. I started in that game, and I played against the Chargers and moved my knee out the next week. And so I was at the game, but I was there with my dad and my friends watching the game. But I didn't even suit up.
That 1988 49ers team I've always compared to the 1967 Green Bay Packers. It was the 49ers' third world championship, and it had been the Packers' third consecutive world championship. And both teams struggled during the regular season. It wasn't like you were 15-1, or some of the Packer teams that have been 12-2 or 13-1. The Packers had gone 9-5 in 1967, and then had beaten the Cowboys in the Ice Bowl, and then had beaten the Raiders in the Super Bowl. And your team was, I believe, am I correct, 11-5, 10-6 during the regular season, but then get hot down the stretch and get hot in the playoffs. So I've always made that comparison. Harper, what do you kind of observations do you have about that particular?
Well, it's
year?
funny. Your rookie year, you go 13-2. That was the strike year, Jeff, and everybody's anticipating you're going to win the Super Bowl. You go in that first divisional game, you lose to the Vikings. That had to be probably some fodder and maybe some stuff you put up on the locker room to go, we're never going to let that happen again. And even though you didn't have the same record, you end up winning the Super Bowl the following year. I think there was a little bit of a, hey, we're not going to let anybody beat us this time. Is there any truth to what I was just mentioning right there?
Oh yeah, that was a crazy game against the Vikings. We should beat those guys, and it was at home. We had the home field advantage, and we had a great season. And it was a weird start for me. I had basically a staph infection in my left knee. I think it was my left knee, and I had it scoped. I had some cartilage damage. I had it scoped, and then had staph. So I missed. I was out. I was in the hospital for like 3 weeks during camp, so I missed the whole camp, and then ended up, missing the first 3 games on IR. So I didn't, and then we were on strike, so we didn't even get paid that for those games.
Right.
That was crazy, and but we came out of that, swinging for the fences, and we did really well, and we kept winning, and we went on and we played the Vikings in that first playoff game and lost. And Steve Young, and he came in, and that Joe got benched that game. That was kind of weird. Coach Walsh said, Joe, let's give Steve a shot. Steve did pretty well. He ran a touchdown back, had a real long run, one touchdown, and we didn't win it. So,
well, when you get to camp, you mentioned that this is your first year. You're looking across from Michael Carter and Dwayne Board. I've got Kevin Fagan on the roster back then. Some guy named Charles Haley. Someone might have heard of that guy, maybe a little bit. Larry Roberts, Jeff Stover. Talk a little bit about, hey, I've seen these guys on TV, and now I'm lining up against them. What was that like for you?
It was awesome playing against those guys, been in practice and getting to know them. Charles Haley was funny, man. And, I got a couple of fights with him during practice and stuff. And, it was.
Of course you did.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Michael Carter, I was gunning with him every day because he was a nose tackle. And when I was a guard, he was a 3 technique or whatever. And, I got to play against Fagan a lot in practice. And he helped me with my pass rushing, pass protection skills. Just that he was such a great pass rusher,
Did Charles? Excuse me, real quick. Did Charles complain about his back? I know later on in his career he wouldn't even practice. He'd say, "My back hurts. I'm going to take a day off," and he would. And then he'd go into the game. He'd have 2.5 tackles for loss. He'd have a sack and a fumble recovery. I mean, it's just amazing how incredible.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, didn't really complain about his back, but till when I was around, I mean, that was early days. Later on, I was probably later on.
Yeah.
I met him, when he was first came out.
Well, everyone says that defense wins championships, and obviously everyone thinks about and refers to Rice and Roger Craig and eventually Ricky Waters and all the great offensive weapons that were associated with Montana and Rice. But defensively, you guys could bring it, man. You had a great defense, and especially in the playoffs when you turn it on. You end up beating the Bears. You beat the Vikings that Super Bowl year, and then obviously, as Steven mentioned, a really good Cincinnati team going into that Super Bowl. Obviously, tough year, but so rewarding in terms of we're only 10-6, barely qualified for the playoffs, but when the rubber met the road, we're the best team out there.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, let me get a drink here. We ended up losing to the Bears, I believe, at Soldier Field that year. The year we played Cincinnati in Miami.
Monday night game, I think, wasn't it?
Yep. And it was I played defense in that game. Walsh put me in on the goal line defense. It was pretty cool. We got to play with Michael Carter on the right to pin the center on the goal line. It was fun.
So 1989 rolls around, Jeff, and this is, I mean, I'm a football historian, and I'm here to tell you that that's as good a football team as ever graced a field in the National Football League. 15-1, beats John Elway from Granada Hills in the Super Bowl by one of the most lopsided scores of all time. How incredible was that 1989 San Francisco 49er team?
Yeah, we were we had one loss that year. I mean, what was the record?
One lost. Miami? Yeah. Was that Miami?
No, that was the Bears. You were 14-2 that year. George Seiferd's first year.
Okay,
that's right. And then well, the Super Bowl was, we ended up pretty much Elway didn't get much done because of our defense. Fagan had a couple sacks. Charles Haley was real good that game. And our defense just swarmed him. And he couldn't do anything. So we played pretty well.
Share a little bit about some of the offensive linemen that ended up becoming household names. The Farnhorsts. You've got Randy Cross, of course. Steve Wallace. Jesse Sapolu. Bruce Colley, who I played with. Bubba Paris. Clark Thomas. Chuck Thomas, excuse me. Guy McIntyre. Those are some names that over years just kind of always filtered in, some household names because near the playoffs or, when it was really important, Pat Summerall and John Madden would be talking about the guys up front and the job that they'd be doing, the dirty work up front to protect Montana. But you're with them every day. You're practicing with those guys. So I'm not asking for the dirt. I'm just saying that I'm sure there's some things that you learned that they would do that go, hey, it works, and it'd make me a better football player.
Yeah. I learned a lot from all the guys. I think Guy McIntyre really was a great run pulling guard. Learned how to loosen up and pull away. Guy used his arms and stuff. The way he ran and stuff was really the right way to pull. And then I learned a lot from Randy my first year about the offense because he played center. Well, actually, Fred, I don't know his last name now. Fred was their center, the guy from Oregon.
Quillen?
Yep, Fred Quillen. And then Randy took over at center, and then Jesse and I were training up at guard. Um, and then it was kind of frustrating over the years because my career didn't last because of my spine. I ended up having a L4, L5 fusion my third season. My spine was pretty torqued, from all the heavy lifting and squatting over the years. And, if I had it all to do over again, I would have stayed away from some of the stuff in the weight room and did things a little differently. Did more training on the track and on the bicycle and stuff the way I do now. But I look at like Pat Summerall and those guys over the years, and they would talk about the guys on the 49er line and when they were winning championships, and they did it again in '94, and it was tough, because I wasn't around. I thought I should have been there for 10, 12 years like Randy Cross.
Well, share a little bit about the not the disappointment, but just the struggle. Really, your body's just not reacting the same way that it did when you were 18 or 19. That's obvious. But here you are. You're on a championship football team, but you can't move at full speed. You can't lift at full speed. There's a pain process that you go through, and obviously there's someone else that's going to take my job. What was that like for you?
Well, that was tough. I was just playing with a broken spine the whole time. They finally fused my spine my third season, but I was playing with a condition called spondylolisthesis, and it's a crack in a vertebra, and the bone that connects the vertebrae basically, and so that thing was cracked, and I was playing with it, and then they finally fused it, and it just things didn't work out the way I'd planned in college. I was in really good shape, and I didn't have any injuries. Played injury free all through college. Didn't start at every game. Then when I got there, got to the NFL, and it was one injury after another, so it was very disappointing.
Yeah. Well, starting with your knee, and then the infection, and then obviously with an operation and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier, Jeff. I want to be real sensitive the way I ask you. If I could do it all over again, many people would say I would have done it exactly the same way. You're probably thinking, I probably wouldn't have done as much heavy lifting, but work on my technique a little bit more, work on those little things that I could do to make sure I'm faster, that I'm at a better angle, or those, is that coaching, or is that stuff that only you can do because it's you? Nobody can teach me this. I just need to be able to do it.
Well, in college, I was coached by some pretty good guys. I mean, we had, Hudson Houck and Pat Morris were two offensive line coaches at SC.
Sure.
They had pretty good, technique and stuff. And then Pat, Bob McKittrick could, so I learned pretty good technique and stuff. And it was just the conditioning and the getting ready, the injury stuff. Playing with injury. It was tough.
Yeah, that's very.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of players of your era have suffered a lot of injuries. And in fact, just a few years after you got out of USC, in 1989, when you were suffering from injuries with the 49ers, USC, their football team had a very good season. They went to the Rose Bowl, but most of those linebackers for the 1989 Trojans, this includes Junior Seau, had passed away before they were 50 or 55 years old from concussions. Right. And this was an era before people realized the severity of concussions or had made technological advancements to the helmet and to the shoulder wear. And so you played at a time when your body really took a beating. And so there's no question about that. And I've been around you a lot. I see you're moving around even while you're doing this interview. Your back hurts and your body hurts. And so this is if you look back on it from that standpoint, you had glory, the girls, the money, all that was great.
Yeah.
But, it comes with a price, doesn't it?
Yes, sir. Yeah, it's fun while it lasted, but yeah, and the injuries took place and all that, but it was great. I think in the end, what came out of it was just the sportsmanship and the team, camaraderie with my teammates, and getting to know guys and teammates and stuff, and Trojan football and all that. But it was I enjoyed the game while it lasted, but the heavy lifting is really what killed me, man. I mean, doing the heavy squats, 600-700 pound squats, probably didn't need to be. I didn't need to be doing that. I should have been running interval training on the track and some different type of leg work to build my quads and build my leg strength versus
weight training was going through a lot of changes during the 1980s, and a lot was learned in the 90s. I got into it, at the gym in the early 90s, and a lot was changing in the way you approached weight training and how much weight you lifted, how you switched the kind of training you would do so it would surprise your body. And I mean, I got to the point where I was bench pressing 300 pounds myself, being at 6'6", 230, but it was a different way of approach. And I look back at my short career and I overtrained. I was taught the more time in the gym, the better. You want to be in there 3 or 4 hours. It was crazy. And I'd walk out of there more tired and feeling like I had almost lost strength because I worked at it so much that I'd overdone it. And I think that was probably a lot of what you're talking about, because you're not that much younger than I am, and you were training during that same period of time when a lot of these things that we know today were not yet learned, right?
The school I came out of really was Nebraska. That's bigger, faster, stronger. I forget the strength coach there, real famous. Anyways, they had a great strength program, a great facility at the time, better than a lot of other schools. USC really didn't have much as far as strength facility. We got one put in when the Olympics took place in '84. They built out the weight room down there below Heritage Hall.
I remember that weight room very well. I actually worked there.
But before that, it was like a dungeon, a little dungeon. They didn't have anything.
Yeah, it was a dungeon down at Heritage Hall. It was, and you had to share it with, the women's basketball team. And, like you say, it was not like the Nebraska Cornhuskers.
Once they went to the Olympics,
way ahead of the game.
And they funded something. Somehow the USC got that weight room out of the
'84 Olympics was.
Yeah, you got the pool too. The pool was a gift in '83. There was a bunch of international meets that would take place on the campus there during the summer. Yeah. Well, I know the weights themselves, but I think also, and if it's just a comment on my side, is the time to repair. You don't really have that in the season, and that can make a huge difference. Giving your bones a chance to heal up and to calcify, as opposed to saying, I got to go out to practice again. You don't get that luxury. Eventually, your career is over. Did you have something else in mind that you wanted to do while you were in school, or were you preparing for anything, or was this a shock to you? And eventually what ended up happening because of being released by the 49ers?
Well, when I was at USC, I was in the business school. I wanted to study business, and my emphasis was real estate finance and securities, and I day trade now, so I've learned a little bit about that the hard way. I mean, it's changed over the years. The nuances of day trading are all different now than what I learned at USC. I mean, back then we didn't have any computer. It was basically doing swapping disks, and
Yeah.
everything's evolved. So
Pink sheets.
yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I was a pretty gifted student. Because I worked hard and all, and that came. It was great. And as time, it prepared me for later on. I think I don't know. I got into training athletes, actually, some football guys. I was helping kids out, training individual athletes for speed and strength, and that's one thing I was trying to get across to them is like, you don't really need to do the heavy squats and the heavy cleans and the jerks and all that. And you're better off on the track doing a 440 or a 220 and then walking and then sprinting and then doing lighter type exercises now.
That's known as fartlekting, Swedish term.
Yeah. So I've trained. I got into that some, and but as far as using my degree later on, it's I really I worked for a prop company for a while. Did some trading there. That was interesting. It was a company that the SEC kind of frowns upon. They use dark pools and they do all this. It was interesting. Pretty neat way to make money, but they kind of.
Are you telling me you worked in a boiler room, Jeff? No, come on.
The problems that it was a really strange deal, man. It was in West LA, and it was there about a year, and they were gone.
Yeah, there's a lot of strange things that happen. And speaking of being out of LA, you make your home in Idaho now. Tell us about how that happened and what brought you up to the Great Northwest.
Well, I moved up here in 2019 just to make a change, and a lot of my friends were moving up, and so I just decided to come up. And it's a beautiful country up here. Got out of the big city, and I lived in Blanchard my first 2 years. I had a place on 7 acres, and that was a neat spot, and I ended up selling that, and it was a real estate deal I made money on, and then I sold that and bought my condo here in Lewiston, and then my girlfriend and I have a place in Orofino, which is 2 hours east of here.
A few years ago, there was a show, the Craig Ferguson Show, and he had a guest, Sandra Bullock, the actress, was on, and he says, "Hey, Sandra, you live in Austin, Texas now, right?" And she goes, "Yes. How do you like it?" And she goes, "I love it." Wait, I can't say that because we've got too many people that have moved here. So don't move to Austin is basically what her message was. She wanted to change. Are you in a position there in Lewiston? I know in Boise, the locals there are going, "Okay, we've got enough Californians now."
I got the USC plates too. They don't like it. They don't like the California guys.
You're basically advertising, "Hey, guess what? I'm not a native."
Tell them USC, University of Southern California alumni.
Yeah. I've seen your car.
Got their Idaho plates, the Vandals, So,
well. Well, Jeff, go ahead, Steven.
Well, I was just going to say, I don't want to take up too much of Jeff's time. You mentioned he had about an hour. So is there anything you'd like us to know, about what you're doing these days, or anything we missed about your career, USC with the 49ers, something that...
I'm a little missed today. I'm really tired. I've been up since the early morning hours of day trading, and I did okay today. I was trading NVIDIA and Intel and up and down. And
so you did well with the NVIDIA, huh?
Yeah. I was just trading the swings, you know.
Are they swinging back after they were down?
Dropped, you know, down to 103, and then I don't know, came up. It's bouncing around, you know.
You're having a better day than I'm having on the market. I don't
I
even want to look
shorted
at
it
it.
for a while, and then I bought it, and anyway, so yeah, I was doing that, and yeah, just a little kind of tired, but I think you know, I was talking to Tim Green last week, you know, and he played quarterback for us in the Rose Bowl, like you're saying, and he lives in Hayden, and we'd like to try to do something like this and try to get a show going, a
Oh
sports.
yeah, we're gonna have him on.
Yeah, he'd be a great get. He'd be a great
Yeah.
guest.
Oh, he's funny man.
Really funny, man.
Yeah. No, I know Steve. I met him right around because I met him the same way I met you when I was interviewing all these wonderful Trojans for what it means.
Hopefully, they'll have a little bit more sleep than I have.
Well, I've known his brother Frank, and I told this story on the show with Harper. Incredibly, I met Frank in a completely different setting. Frank did battlefield tours of World War I, and I wrote a screenplay. I wrote screenplays for the better part of 7 years, and I wrote a screenplay about World War I, and it was based on a story that Frank Jordan had told me, which I had been unaware of. So I knew Frank since 1997 and then got to know Steve. Well, I knew Steve a little bit at USC, just like, you know, you kind of see a guy at the 5-0 or whatever, but I didn't. The football players I knew at that time, you know, Del Rio, Jeff Brown was a good friend of mine.
Right.
Both those guys were baseball players. And of course that was, you know, those were the people.
I know.
Mike Roth. I don't know if you remember him. He was from Manhattan Beach.
Oh yeah, Mike Roth and I. We had Mike had a radio show just like this on campus, the USC radio show.
Yeah,
it was kind of a unique little deal. I don't think it was the public. It wasn't the main USC radio show. It was some other. It was anyway. I'm a ham radio operator since.
Hey, have you spoken to Curtis Kim on ham radio?
What's that? Oh yeah, Curtis. Yeah, I've been I've communicated with him. I haven't talked to him yet because I haven't been up there to do HF. But
excellent.
I'm going to talk to him.
That's Curtis, by the way. Harper is a neighbor of mine who lives just up the hill from me. I took Jeff. I live on a hill and with a beautiful view. Unfortunately, I didn't realize how many injuries Jeff has had, and I walked him too much, and he couldn't quite.
I think I can do it now, Steve. I've been training. I've been working out every day, man.
Well, you're training, but this was uphill walking, and it was steep.
Hey guys, I got to use the restroom. I got to go.
Okay. Well, it's great, fantastic having you, Jeff. And let me tell you something. You're one of the all-time greats. You're one of the greatest college football players of all time. You've done things professionally that others of us can only just dream of. And you're in an amazing fraternity, and you're a friend and a great guy and a fantastic Trojan. I want to thank you so much for being on our show.
Well, thank you, Steve. I appreciate it, man. And we'll get it better next time. But we'll talk more, man. Have a good day, guys.
All right, brother.
Yeah, well, Jeff, thank you for joining us. High school, you're a college All-American, 2 times, very seldom that happens, and then a 2-time Super Bowl champion as well. You're in a very unique class, and as Dave Baker said once to me, for all that you did for the game, for all that you'll continue to do for the game, we salute you. We appreciate you being a part of the show. So for Steven Travers and Take 5, this has been Harper LaBelle. We have Jeff Briegel as our guest today. Logan Landers is our producer and engineer. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to 100 Yards of Football. We hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.
Thanks,